Violence against women is clearly understood to be morally wrong and a criminal offense here and in many other countries around the world. But authorities sometimes turn a blind eye, even in the case of murder.
Inside Lehman's Mercedes Ferguson tells us about an international effort to help end this cycle of violence in Central America.
The Center for Human Rights and Peace Studies at Lehman College cites disturbing statistics. The combined murder rate for Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras is among the highest in the world. A significant number of the victims are women. In Guatemala, power structures that formed in the 1980s are believed to play a strong part in this. The center hosted New Pathways to Justice, an international conference examining ways to stop violence against women in Central America. It brought together victims' advocates, human rights organizations, and forensic investigators.
The state, the army, and the police trained their troops to sexually violate and torture women. And so you have a full range of people who are responsible for atrocities, crimes against humanity, genocide, and none of them have ever been brought to justice. And what's even worse is that the power structures that existed during the dictatorship, although there's a civilian government, those structures have never been dismantled.
For the families of the victims, it has been a long road to finding justice. Jorge Velasquez Duran became a victim advocate after his daughter Clorina was raped and murdered in Guatemala. Speaking through a translator, Duran says when his daughter first disappeared, authorities told him she probably ran off with a boyfriend, and they did not even file a report.
Por un lado me ayuda muchísimo. Al principio de la presentación dice...
It helps me a lot to personify her, and at the beginning of the presentation I said he will be your voice, he will speak on your behalf, and this is because the victims of femicide are dead and they cannot speak by themselves, and they need to be heard, so they need someone else to speak for them, and this is the only way to seek for justice.
Teams of forensic investigators are also investigating other cases in Central America. One such investigation is focusing on a 2005 drug-related case in Guatemala, where a young lady was kidnapped and assassinated for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. American volunteers who helped to exhume her body say very little investigating was done. Any significant information that was recovered seems to have been ignored.
There's a lack of political will to investigate these kind of deaths. In this particular case, this young girl, she was 17, had 2 strikes against her. Number one, she's female. Number two, she was a special needs kid. And people just aren't interested in anything that happens to females and special needs children. One of the many jobs for human rights organizations is to put human faces on cases of rights violations.
There's a lot that needs to happen to take what's on paper and make it real in women's lives. So a lot of that has to do with ensuring that cases of violence are investigated properly, that they're taken seriously by prosecutors and pursued fully, and that the justice system actually responds.
For students who attended the conference, it showed the path toward making a difference. And for some, it struck close to home.
That has to be changed. I mean, we're in an era that we have the civil rights movement, we have the immigration movement, that we're fighting for human rights, and it just continues to shock me.
This isn't just about my country, it's about the whole world. And it's true, we live in a globalized environment, a globalized world where if something shocking happens, it's like it's in the headlines. After a week, it's like, oh, it happened, oh well, like we can forget about it.
It's definitely very important to educate children, even from very young ages, and to really have these programs constantly going on in school to let young teenagers know that this can happen, and it can happen to anybody or anyone. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what race you are. It can just really happen to anybody.
Conference panelists say the key to breaking the cycle of violence is to build the rule of law one case at a time. looking toward the day when the political and judicial systems will identify and prosecute those who commit violent crimes against women. Mercedes Ferguson, Inside Lehman.